Yo, what's going on, Serpa Squad? Tanner here. I hope all of you are doing well and staying safe. I've been keeping busy and working on a lot of projects, but whenever I'm not doing that, I've been outside doing some yard work and working on the ponds, and pond season is here, so I figured a pond update was probably the right thing to do. So let's go out in the front yard and take a look at the Aquascape ecosystem pond. So I'm out here at the front yard pond, and it made it through winter just fine. I'll tell you guys more about what I did during the winter for it. I will say it wasn't much, but overall, it's doing really well. The only issue is that we got a lot of string algae and leaves down in here. I went on some trips during the time that all of the leaves were falling, and I planned on putting a net on here, but I couldn't find it, and then by the time I got home from my trips, it was full of leaves and they were all off the trees. So I took out what I could during the season, but obviously it was cold, so I didn't really want to put my hands in there. So I got to get in here, take all those leaves out, get rid of all that algae, and just get it all cleaned up. So why don't we go ahead and do that, and then I'll give you an update on the pond itself. To do the job, I got a scrub brush and a net and a bucket. Probably mainly just gonna need the scrub brush for up top here, but I'm gonna start up at the top of the waterfall and work my way down to the basin of the pond. Doesn't make sense to start down there and clean it out and then come up here and everything gets washed into the pond. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through here, scrub off the rocks to get rid of the algae, pull out any leaves I can, and just get it looking clean, and then we'll get down to there. I'm not sure why I didn't come up with this sooner, but rather than have everything washed back into the pond after I clean out the waterfall, why don't I get the net and just prop it down here under the fall so that everything falls into the net. I think that'd probably be a better idea. Got the top portion all cleaned out, working on the second one here, but as you can see, the net really is doing its job. That thing is full of gunk right now. I'm sure plenty of it is starting to overflow into here because it's really dirty, so I might have to wait a little bit before I get into here so I can actually see what I'm doing. But let me clean this thing out and we'll keep going. Alright, so it's official. We got the top two all cleaned out. It's looking good. Now I got to move down here to the big guy, and that's going to be quite a task. So let's get going. As I was going through and netting up all this algae, I accidentally caught a fish or two. I see another one in there. Yeah, see right here? Little baby. One here as well, so I have to be mindful of them, and I have to keep checking to make sure that I get them out. So back into the pond they go. Here we are a few hours later. I believe that I got most of the leaves and algae removed. Once this clears up, I'm going to do a second clean to get all of that out, but until then, I put the hornwort up in here. It's normally down on the bottom, but as I was cleaning out all this stuff, that came out, and rather than have to dig it up again, I just left it over there, and then once I get this all clean, I'll put it back down in there. But to expedite the clearing up process of this, I'm going to put a little bit of water clarifier in here and some fine filter pads in the overflow to kind of get all of those fine particles out of the system. So why don't I go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back in a few hours to finish the clean. I should also mention that we ended up with pretty much a 5-gallon bucket full of old leaves and algae and such. And the reason for all of the algae really is because of the leaves. Much like in an aquarium, when you have excess nutrients and things aren't balanced, it promotes the growth of algae. So with all of these leaves in the system that shouldn't be in the system, causes all of this algae growth. So we got to take it out and sort of restart here for the spring. Here we are the next day. It's not quite as sunny out, but you can still get a really good idea as to how much cleaner the pond really is. That water is pretty much crystal clear, but there are still a few leaves down in the bottom here, so I want to get in there and get rid of the rest of those, and then this should be good for the season. And here we are back at the pond nearly 2 weeks later. I didn't want to wait that long in between the maintenance and the update, but unfortunately you know how spring weather is. It's just most days it's really rainy, some days it's cold, some days it's warm, and this is really one of the first days where I've actually been able to get out here again and film, so that's what I'm gonna do. As you saw earlier in the video, the pond overwintered just fine, although I didn't really talk about anything specifically. The first thing worth mentioning is probably about the fish, the livestock. I know that many of you have been wondering, what do you do with these guys over the winter? Do you need to do anything special to your pond? And the only thing special that I did was let it keep running. The main concern with the livestock would be if the pond freezes over completely, or if it's not dug to the appropriate depth and the whole thing freezes into a block of ice. We don't have issues with either of those though, because this is dug to the appropriate depth and I allow the waterfall to run year round, so only certain parts of it freeze over. It's a little bit colder today, so the fish aren't quite as active as they typically are, but I'll overlay some B-roll so that you can see how they're doing. Even though that's the case for the larger fish, all of the small ones are out right now, and they were out for the entire winter, so I knew they were going to be alright. However, I didn't see the larger sunfish or the catfish until that day I did maintenance. To be honest, I was a little bit concerned about the larger sunfish. I thought that maybe they were just being lethargic down at the bottom from the colder temperatures and a raccoon reached in and got them, because I would have thought, you know, you're seeing the babies out, probably going to see the adults as well, but that's not the case. I think that because the babies were born in the pond, they're used to seeing me all the time and they recognize that I'm not going to hurt them, whereas the adults, they used to live inside, they knew who I was, then I put them in the pond and I broke their trust, and now they're kind of like a wild fish, so to speak. They see me and typically that means run and hide, but they do know I feed them, so when I do feed, they come out. On the other hand, I wasn't worried about the catfish at all, because they do hide from time to time and won't come out for a few days, and then all of a sudden they'll be out and about. But I'll tell you, the night after I cleaned this out, they were out and about, cruising around looking for food, and so were the adult sunfish, so I was really excited to see that. So arguably the most important part about the pond, the fish have made it through the winter, and I cannot wait to see how much they grow this season. I'm also really excited to see how all of the pond plants are coming back. We've got the horsetail, the acorus, the bloody dock, the foxtail, variegated cattail, pickerel, and hardy water lily, to name a few. I'm gonna have to fertilize the lilies soon, but they already got some decent growth to them, and I cannot wait to see some flowers in the coming months. While on the pond plants, hopefully everything calms down here shortly so that I could get out in the next month or so to get all of the tropical summer plants for this, so we can really bring it to life. And of course we have all of the landscaping plants springing back to life. I love to see that, because without them this thing looks naked and just not the same. We're definitely going to have to get a few more plants this year. I think that we did really well last year, considering that the majority of those plants were bought on clearance for only a few dollars because they were after the flowering season. And I can already tell now that they're twice the size that they were last year. But we're definitely going to have to get a few more, just fill in a few more spaces and really just fine tune this landscape. I also got to mulch and pull out a few weeds and just do a few other things to just really tweak this landscape, but I love the way it's turning out and I cannot wait to see how it looks at the end of this summer. Now I know what you're waiting for me to talk about was the moss. If you remember, whenever we first set this up, we put patches throughout the waterfall and tried to soften some of the edges and fill in some of the spaces, but there was not nearly as much then as there is now. I'll tell you what, it definitely did spread a little bit over the season last year, but whenever all the snow was on the ground and the frost and everything, I swear it did the most of it growing then, because as soon as the snow was gone, everything was covered in moss, and I love to see it. Just like all of the landscaping plants are really softening things and make it look more natural, all of the moss between the rocks and everything, that really just makes it look so natural and just like something you'd see out in nature. And I guess in a way that's exactly what we've done here. We've created a little slice of nature right in my front yard to enjoy. And there you have it, the Aquascape ecosystem pond, overwintered and ready for spring and summer of 2020. I'll tell you what, I always wanted ponds of my own, but I never could have imagined that they're nearly as enjoyable as they are. My wife and I sit out on these rockers all the time and just enjoy the sights and sounds of the water feature. We hear the waterfalls, it attracts all kinds of birds, we watch the fish swimming around in there and doing their thing, see the flowers on the plants once they bloom, and it's just so much fun. And there's so much more that I could say about this, but I'll save that for future videos. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the update and progress on this. I cannot wait to see how it's going to turn out in the next couple of months and stuff when all the plants really start to pop up, the fish are more active, and just so much more to see with this. So if you want to see anything that I mentioned throughout this video, then stay tuned. If you also want to see an update on the DIY pond in the backyard, stay tuned for that as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Until next time, Serpa Squad, take care and peace.